Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. In this video I am going to do a ranking of the top 20 best gigs I've ever attended. This is an intensely personal list. Everyone will have their own reasons for picking their favourites. For me, there are a few factors to take into account: how much I like the band, how much I enjoyed the actual performance itself, and there's a certain amount of who I was with at the time has a big impact on how much you enjoyed the experience of a live concert. This is inspired partly by the fact that I have just taken the plunge and bought tickets to go and see McFly live in Birmingham on the 31st of October. And also by the fact that I've seen that a certain band who will appear quite high on this list are touring again next year, and I really want to get hold of tickets for that one. Before I dive in, I just remind you to subscribe if you've not already done so, to hit the thumbs up to like the video and the bell to receive notifications of future content. I would also urge you to make use of the comments section, and please do let me know your favourite gigs that you've attended during your life. So let's dive in at number 20, and at number 20 from the V98 festival that I attended in Leeds, I have placed Catatonia. Not one of my favourite bands, but outstanding performance on the day. So they were playing the second stage, not the main one, and I had no real interest on who was playing the main stage, with a certain amount of regret now, because to my recollection it might well have been Green Day. Now I wish I'd really gone and seen Green Day. However, and can I just say, Kerys Matthews as the front woman was absolutely stunning on that day. They kicked off the gig with International Velvet, the title track of their biggest hit album, and she got a split red dress pretty much all the way up to her hip, and she was sashaying across the front of the stage, singing in Welsh, and then that chorus of "Every day when I wake up, I thank the Lord I'm Welsh." I'm not Welsh, but it was so good that it almost made me want to be. Absolutely stunning performance from the V98 festival from Catatonia at number 20. At number 19, I have placed from 2017 Postmodern Jukebox that I saw at the O2 Academy in Birmingham. If you don't know what they do, they take well-known popular songs of the now and they retrofit them into a 20s, 30s, whatever style. And it's just fun. It opens up the songs to a whole range of interpretations, particularly good ones like the 20s style version of Bad Blood by Taylor Swift. It's just really good fun. And number 18, from the Birmingham Symphony Hall in 1995, I got to see Squeeze on the Ridiculous tour. And this is a point where Squeeze were still trying. I mean, like I said, I like Domino. I actually prefer it a little bit, I think, to Ridiculous. But this was my first time seeing Squeeze, and I'd been a long-time Squeeze fan. Number 17, from 1994 in Sheffield, it's Deacon Blue on the Our Town tour. Now, I had tickets for an earlier iteration of this gig, which was going to be the second half of the Whatever You Say Nothing tour, but it got cancelled. What we didn't know at the time is that Deacon Blue had decided to split, and we're going to do a Greatest Hits album and Greatest Hits tour. Part of the reason that this has stayed with me as long as it has is I met the band at the end of the gig. Went backstage, hung around backstage, and got my programme signed by all 6 members of the band. I also went with 2 close friends, my 2 housemates at university, and it was the end of an era for myself and one of my closest friends who had bonded over Deacon Blue. Our favourite band was no longer going to be available with new music. Number 16, from the V99 festival, which had moved from Leeds to Weston Park in Staffordshire, The Beautiful South. I have long loved the music of The Beautiful South. You'll see I've got a ranking video of their albums. But they were riding the crest of the success of Quench. Virtually everything they played was a hit single, with the exception, to my recollection, of Your Father and I off Quench. But this was a absolutely thoroughly enjoyable hour of Beautiful South music. It was great. It was the best thing I saw at V99. I enjoyed V98 Festival a huge amount, which is why I did V99. V99 was a bit of a come down for me in comparison. But the Beautiful South was the highlight and one of the best gigs I've ever been to. Number 15, from 1997, a gig that gained a huge amount of emotional resonance. From his residency at Ronnie Scott's, it's Martin Joseph. Now, I've seen Martin Joseph multiple times since, but this particular first time of seeing him was just special. The date in question was the day of Princess Diana's funeral. And in his gig, he said I wrestled with playing this song all week with what had happened, and it's called Everything's News. There is a line in that song that says Everything's News, Diana's on the piste. So at the time, she was all over the news all the time. She was having a skiing holiday. It was news and so on, and it gave an emotional heft to an already quite thought-provoking song. It was a glorious gig, and I've seen Martin Joseph several times since. That was the first time I'd seen him live, and the best time I've seen him live. Martin Joseph, residency at Ronnie Scott's in 1997. And number 14, from the University Cafe in 1994, it's Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze. This was an acoustic solo performance, and it was just fantastic. Not only did it give me an opportunity to see not Squeeze, but the voice of Squeeze, it also, I remember who I attended with. It was my girlfriend at the time, who I'd kind of turned into a bit of a Squeeze fan. And what a great intimate acoustic gig. At number 13, from the V98 Festival, I have placed Robbie Williams. Now, Robbie Williams at that time had turned his career around. Angels had saved his career. He was about to release his second album, and more to the point, had just released Millennium as the lead single from that. It was the Saturday night. He wasn't the headliner, that was the Charlatans, but he probably should have been. And Millennium, the following day, was about to hit number one. His first number one single. And what a showman. Robbie Williams is one of the best live performers of the last 30 years. And I defy anybody to say, even if you don't like him, that he's not great on stage, because he really is. And he was probably about to hit his peak in 1998 when we saw him at the V Festival. At number 12, from the same festival, and I believe may have even been the same day, James. So I went to this gig not expecting very much. I knew James from Sit Down, and the fact that that song had probably gained a little bit of negative exposure, I was blown away. Tim Booth was an absolutely fantastic vocal frontman. I suddenly realised I knew far more James songs than I thought. This was effectively a greatest hits show. I went out and bought the James Greatest Hits as a result of it, which I still love to this day. It's one of my favourite compilation albums. And there were some technical problems in the middle of it. And it was right at the point that they were going to sing They're All Out to Get You. I don't know whether they'd intended to, but they did anyway, but without the amplification. And it was just, they were the special guests for the V98 Festival on that day, and it was just fantastic. And number 11, from the Sheffield Octagon in 1995, it's Kirsty MacColl. I had long enjoyed the music of Kirsty MacColl. I owned Kite, Electric, Landlady, Titanic Days was recent, and she was touring in support of Galore, the greatest hits. And it was just a great collection of music, and a chance to see somebody who at that point had not performed live very much. She suffered from huge stage fright. It was a fantastic gig. Myself and my friend Neil attended that, and then we decided, you know what, let's go around the backstage and just see if we can get stuff signed, having done it not that long before with the Deacon Blue gig that I mentioned earlier. And as we went round the back of the stage, there was someone I knew and had not had contact with for a couple of years called Miriam. And she was going to do the same as well. And it was just nice to reconnect with her. We were the only three hanging around backstage. And one of the guys from the Sheffield Octagon Centre said, "Are you waiting for Kirsty?" We went, "Yeah." He went, "Hang on." Went back in. And we were invited down to see her in the green room. She signed our stuff. We were offered a drink, and I remember turning it down. I kind of regret that. If you don't know, and if you're a fan of music, why don't you know? Kirsty MacColl died tragically in 2000. And I still own my ticket from that date, signed by Kirsty MacColl. It was only £8, that ticket. I mean, you think now just how well priced that was. £8 to go and see someone who is a musical legend in my personal view. Kirsty MacColl, 95, the Sheffield Octagon. And number 10, just inside the top 10, but again, Sheffield, I was at Sheffield University, it's the end of the first year, and they have an end-of-year festival. In 1993, June 93, I finally got to see Bucks Fizz. If you've watched videos of mine before, you'll know I'm a Bucks Fizz fan. Unashamedly so. I have plans to do other Bucks Fizz videos. If you want to watch those, please let me know in the comments below. I'm holding back on them to see whether or not there really is the interest. I must have been the happiest person on the whole of Sheffield University campus to know that my childhood band heroes, I was finally going to get to see them live. And they didn't disappoint. It was Bobby G, Mike Nolan and Cheryl Baker. It was a trio at that point. And there was up to this point of this gig, I had not rated Now Those Days Are Gone. There was a moment when they played that live and they said this was their favourite single of all the ones they'd ever released. And it really got me. I don't know what it was at the time, but it really, really got me. And it is, as a result, my favourite Bucks Fizz song. It's in my top 10 songs of all time. I adore Now Those Days Are Gone. And this gig was the reason why. It just worked for me on that night. And I saw what a brilliant song it was. It won an Ivor Novello Award, that particular song. So somebody agrees with me. And number 9, Elvis Costello and the Attractions in Sheffield, November 1994. I must only have been an Elvis Costello fan a year, 18 months maybe at this point, because this will have been in my third year at university. So this was in support of Brutal Youth, but at the time there'd also been the release of the best of Elvis Costello and the Attractions on Demon Records, which I also owned. So I knew virtually everything that was played and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great gig. At number 8, I have placed an artist that I had been itching to see for years, and it was Paul McCartney, 2003, at the Birmingham Indoor Arena. Why so low for an artist that I love so much? I've done so many videos on him, and the simple answer is one of my favourite things of a gig is not knowing what comes next. And I love that moment where there may be a few notes or a bar or two into a track and you go, oh, it's... And maybe it's something you've been desperate to hear. The reason McCartney falls down this list, and he was on form that day, don't get me wrong, is about a week, maybe 2 before he had released Back in the World or Back in the US, depending on which version you've got. And it pretty much printed the set list of what he was going to do. I know that they can't make massive amounts of variation on a set, and it's a special artist who does. So very recently, Costello just did a residency, I think, in New York, where he played a different set list every night. Now that's something special, and it takes a lot out of an artist and their band to do that. But when they release something in advance, it can taint the experience. This is why Meatloaf's not on the list. Now, Meatloaf was a fantastic live performer, but I bought a program. It's one of the few things I ever get from a gig. It's my souvenir. And printed in the program were the lyrics of the songs that he was going to perform live. Where's the Where's the mystery? There has to be some kind of mystery. And it's my own fault with the case of McCartney because I bought the live CD, but then I was a McCartney fan. I was going to buy stuff like that on the day of release. Hold it back so that it doesn't wreck the excitement. Now I know. I'm now older and wiser and know the way that gigs operate. And so I'm really hoping that Paul will tour in the UK again. He's currently doing Australia, that's been announced. He's going to do some stuff in South America. I will do my best to get tickets to go and see him live again. But I know that I do know what to expect. It's not going to be far different from what was on the Glastonbury gig. There might be one or two changes. I'm older and wiser. I understand how it works now. But back then, it actually disappointed me, no matter how good he was, and he was good. Number 7 is a gig that was pretty special. So I've mentioned my friend Neil. We bonded over Deacon Blue. We also bonded over another band, which is Prefab Sprout. And this is Prefab Sprout live at Warwick University, 1st of April 2000. It was the first time I'd been back to Warwick University since I left my PhD in 1996. And so that was a little bit of a bittersweet experience to be going back to somewhere that I'd lived for a year and had not a lot of positive memories about. But what a beautiful gig. And I use the term deliberately. Many gigs I walk out from and I've got ringing ears. That was not going to happen with Prefab Sprout. It was perfectly mixed, but Paddy McAloon suffers from tinnitus. He actually now has Meniere's disease to go with it, which is even worse. And so the sound balance is absolutely critical for an artist like Paddy McAloon. Wendy Smith was not available. She was too busy raising her son. Fair enough. But we did have Martin McAloon, and we also had Neil Conti on the drums, and a whole load of other musicians as well. And it was just a glorious, glorious gig. Such an enjoyable moment, and one of the best gigs I've ever been to, both in terms of sound and enjoyment. And I'm sure my friend Neil would say the same. And number 6 is a gig that just reminds you that every now and then you go and see something, you don't know what to expect, and you are blown away. Number 6, Delamitri, July 1995 at the Aston Villa Leisure Centre. This was not a gig that I chose. My girlfriend at the time really wanted to see Delamitri. They had just released Twisted. I wasn't really bothered, but she was really keen. So I went along. Justin Curry as a frontman and bassist blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. I didn't know most of the songs, but I was carried on the emotion and the energy pouring out of that bloke. Twisted is now one of my favourite albums of all time. I loved the whole thing, and it made me like Delamitri. Up to that point, all I really knew of them was Nothing Ever Happens. And I didn't like it. They didn't play it because there's that feeling that they didn't really like it that much either, because it started to define them. Great gig. Great memories. Delamitri, my number 6. Number 5, for the second time on this list, Beautiful South. And this is also at the Aston Villa Leisure Centre from December 1994. So, song-wise, this was around about the time of the release of Meow. That's what we were expecting to go and see, the tour in support of Meow. But they threw a curveball. They released a greatest hits compilation. One of the best-selling albums ever in the UK. And this was effectively actually in tour of that. The support act was MG Greaves and the Lonesome 2. And Beautiful South had recorded 3 of their songs on B-sides, and they are great songs. They're really, really fine. And so the support act was mint. And then the Beautiful South themselves. And this is one of those gigs where it's the people that I was with that elevate it on this list. Because actually, The V99 performance, song-wise, was better. But the December 94 gig with my ex-girlfriend, who actually was in the process of becoming my girlfriend again, and two of my housemates, including my friend Neil, we all crashed at my parents' house. We had the evening at the gig and a few hours after before people went away. And it was just a moment in time. And if a gig is meant to capture that, Beautiful South, December 94, did exactly that for me. It's why it's my number 5. Number 4 is Elton John in 2002 at the Nottingham Ice Rink. This was in support of Songs from the West Coast album, and rarely has an artist blown me away in the way that Elton John did on that very first song. So if you've watched a video from a couple of weeks back, I did my ranking of Elton John's best 30 songs, in my opinion, from his classic era. And my favourite being Funeral for a Friend, Love Lies Bleeding. And I referenced this gig in that video because he opened with it and then bowed to every corner of the auditorium. I remember saying to my friends as we left that if I could have created my ideal set list, or at least the 3 songs I most wanted to hear, he played all 3. And then I said, and even if I'd extended that to my top 5 songs, to include things like, I guess that's why they call it the blues, and he did those as well. He did all of the 5 ones I would have desperately wanted to see him do. For me, having seen such a good gig by Elton John in 2002, I didn't need to see him again, because I don't think it would have come anywhere near as close as that gig in 2002. It's my number 4. Number 3, I have placed a gig that I went to go and see in 2004. And it's the sole gig I've ever been to outside of the United Kingdom. It was in Canada at a theme park near Toronto, and it was Third Day. If you've watched previous videos of mine ranking albums, you'll know that Third Day are probably my favourite Christian band. They're no longer going, but I saw them live on the Wire tour in 2004. It's one of the few times I bought a t-shirt from a gig because I wanted the proof I was there in Toronto. And it happened to coincide with a visit that I was making to Toronto for a week with the church thing. What a perfect opportunity to see them live. Fantastic. I loved every second. They had 2 support acts. I think one of them was called Day of Fire. They were all right. Then the other was Toby Mac from DC Talk. Third Day, to my knowledge, didn't ever play over the UK very much. And that's the UK's loss. But I saw it in Canada. Third Day, number 3. Number 2 is the most recent gig that I've been to. And right up front, I mentioned that I'm hoping to go and see them again. This is Keane from the Concerts in the Forest with National Forests at Cannock in June 2002, postponed from June 2020, which you may remember was a pandemic. This is the first and so far only gig that I've been to with my wife, and we loved it. Absolutely fantastic. I want to go again. They were so good. They are playing next year in 2024 in the 20th anniversary of the Hopes and Fears album in Birmingham. The tickets go on sale on the 13th, and I want them. I want to go. I want to take my son as well. My wife is willing to go a second time. Keane, summer 2002. It's my number 2. Which leaves my number 1 gig of all time. And there are many reasons why this comes at number 1. But ultimately, this is the first gig I ever went to. And it's Deacon Blue in 1991 on the extended play tour at the Birmingham NEC. They were riding high in the charts with the Backrack and David Songs EP, hence why it's the extended play tour. Ooh Las Vegas had just been released as a collection of B-sides and rarities, was also a hit. And I was a major Deacon Blue fan at the time. I got in for free. So what had happened is my cousin used to collect for the Acorns Children's Hospice, as it now is. It was known as the Birmingham Children's Hospice at the time. And so my cousin and my aunt used to collect at venues on the door. And I was itching to go to this gig, but it was sold out. There was no chance of me going. But somebody at the door where my aunt was collecting handed her a ticket and said, "Do what you can with this. We don't want to give it to a tout." Knowing that I wanted to go, she came round and said, "Do you want it?" And I got in. I took my seat, and this couple who sat next to me said, like, "Oh, how did you get hold of the ticket?" And I said, "I'd been collecting on one of the doors with my cousin and my aunt, and my aunt gave the ticket." She was like, "Oh, we wondered what had happened to it," because it was them who'd given it. And I was really grateful to them because I got to see Deacon Blue live, and it was my first proper gig. So that concludes my top 20 list of the gigs that I've been to in my life. If you're wondering why this video was given an unusual title, it's because last Thursday I appeared on PopMaster on Greatest Hits Radio, and I neglected to mention the title of my YouTube channel on PopMaster. So if you have come looking for it using my name, that's why this is titled the way it is. Before I go, I'd remind you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Tell somebody about the channel, and I'll see you next time.